There are many weapons that are standard in fighting games, like swords or guns, but one pair of weapons that manages to sneak its way into many fighting game rosters is the bow and arrow. The archers in fighting games deserve some praise for using a tool that gets overshadowed by bigger or more modern offensive weapons. And that leads to the topic of this video, partially suggested by viewer Battlebees23, who wanted to see the top 10 archers. I'll just be restricting the scope to those that appeared in fighting games though. Of course, with all of the licensed games in the genre out there are bound to be a few archers that appear beyond the realm of fighting games. However, I'll only be ranking the characters based on their movesets and appearances in their respective fighting games. Now let's analyze these fighters that have the coolest, strongest, and most interesting skills with the bow and arrow for my top 10 archers in fighting games. Number 10. Taskmaster in Marvel vs. Capcom 3. The reason Taskmaster can fire arrows so masterfully is cooler than the actual attacks in the game. He has photographic memory that allows him to use the moves he sees the experts use, so he does not have to practice a day in his life if he just watches a bit of TV. One of the Marvel superheroes he copied was the master marksman Hawkeye, who appeared in the game's roster eventually, and you could probably guess that he'll appear later on this list. Taskmaster has the aim of Hawkeye, as he exclaims during some attacks, firing arrows made of Majin Buu energy or something. All his arrow attacks are different directions and angles of the same attack, which can be charged to fire more arrows, along with a hyper combo version that can be aimed. Overall, he has a great mix of attacks from other Marvel superheroes, but with only Hawkeye's aim and not his array of crazy arrows, Taskmaster lacks Hawkeye's countless tricks, yet can still deal a mass amount of pain that comes with shooting dozens of arrows.
You're in for a world of hurt!
Number 9. Kagome from Inuyasha, A Feudal Fairy Tale. This fighting game based on the Inuyasha anime is not that complex. Characters have basic versions of the attacks you would see in the anime, so the same goes for Kagome, like the attack where she yells loudly. Closer to the video's topic though, she shoots straight arrows at the opponent, hits with the bow up close, and that's about it for the archery. She somehow fires an arrow without reaching into her quiver though. You have some missing sprite animation we should know about there, Kagome?
Yeah, but we don't talk about that.
But still, she's really good at firing consecutive arrows indefinitely, and if you don't see them, she'll certainly make sure you know they're coming toward you with how loudly Kagome telegraphs her attacks in this game. Number 8. Morgan from Aquapaza. Her interests include fighting, eating, drinking, and not wearing pants. You know, the simple things in life. Morgan has the interesting and realistic mechanic of having a set number of arrows in her quiver. Once she fires all 20 of her arrows, good luck, you have to rely on your other techniques. And considering how much this warrior uses her weapon, I'd be counting the contents of your quiver. Her archery skills are enhanced by her dash moves around the screen, and she has a strong variation of her arrow shot that briefly stuns the opponent to make for great combo opportunities. Her ultimate move throws away that arrow limitation as she causes a deadly rain of arrows. Overall, she's a great fighter, but is at a disadvantage against the other archers on this list who have an inexplicable unlimited amount of arrows at their disposal and are not bound to realism. Number 7. Link from Super Smash Bros. Link is a skilled archer, that's common knowledge. His bow and arrow is a reoccurring weapon in the Legend of Zelda series, and he had a game where he personally trains us on how to use a crossbow. Move over, trained professional archery lessons, I have a Wiimote. Link's hero bow is his neutral special attack, and it has the result you'd expect. Link takes out his bow and fires an arrow. Same goes for his counterpart, Toon Link. Young Link in Melee had fire arrows that deal more stun than Link's normal arrow, so I guess Young Link has the coolest variation, or technically the hottest, no one wants to hear puns. Despite Link's prowess in the field of archery, his fighting game appearances don't give him much room to show off. Even if you want to look at one of his appearances in a more traditional fighting game, Link in Soul Calibur 2 as a guest character just shoots arrows without much variation. And, since Soul Calibur is on a 3D plane, the arrows were not as effective as Link's close-up melee attacks. In fact, Ezio's crossbow in Soul Calibur 5 seems like an improved version of Link's arrow attacks. It can hit opponents low, fires quickly, and follow up by sneaking in a second arrow with some meter. Sorry, Link, you're fun to play as in a fighting game, but your archery flair is much more effective in your main games. Number 6. Puella Marionette from Battle Arena Toshinden. This girl has a heart on her shirt, angel wings, and a bow and arrow. Is she actually Cupid? Did I forget one? Puella magically received her weapon named the Suzaku Bow from a mysterious angelic force. It's heavily implied that Uranus, a boss character from the second game, had passed down this bow to her, so that's pretty lucky to have your starter weapon from the top of the arcade ladder. Puella and her team are off to fight the evil Gerard Foundation in a cliché display of pure good versus evil. Her bow has a unique design where it folds inwards when not in use, and can be operated as a weapon designed for close combat if firing arrows is not the optimal strategy. Her arrows are surrounded in sparkles to go with the lore of the bow and her magical girl motif. I think her bow can also shoot unspecified magic since she has a super move where she poses without opening the bow and just great balls of magic surround the opponent. It may just be a different type of arrow that she's firing, but it's never been a mystery I've felt the need to solve. Number 5. Kung Jin from Mortal Kombat X. Kung Jin is the younger cousin of MK veteran Kung Lao, but he uses a much more standard weapon than the Razor Blade hat. Kung Jin's arrow attacks, though, are not too fancy. He shoots normal arrows in various directions, and that's about it for the arrow attacks. However, this archer can get pretty far in a fight with just the other half of his weapon duo.
You go too far, Kung Jin.
No, not far enough.
He probably has the most unique bow-only attacks of everyone on this list. His bow is about his own height, and he can use its momentum to dive kick and for other maneuvers. He finds ways to just beat down his opponent with the bow since it's so heavy, especially the head of the bow. And you can take the term head literally since it's shaped like a dragon's head, which breathes fire. So if the arrows are not working for Kung Jin, he has a pretty solid backup plan. Number 4. Yukari Takeba from Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. So we have a Sentai Power Ranger Great Saiyaman who shoots arrows. Awesome. Her archery techniques are great without assistance, firing arrows with speed and precision. But with her persona helping, her arrows become a much more difficult threat. Her persona can create a wind orb that allows her arrows to track her opponent. Controlling wind and archery do go well together, so Yukari has the best element to complement her skill. If I had to list one downfall of Yukari, it's merely that many of her attacks look pretty similar, just with varying angles and potential status effects. Even her instant kill move looks more like a normal arrow being shot, just with a more cinematic tone, victory music, and a finishing line that basically tells your opponent that there's no hope of surviving. However, no matter how similar the attacks look, the arrows are flashier than other entries on this list, since Yukari's weapons follow pure anime logic, which is what makes them stand out. Number 3. Mina Majikina from Samurai Showdown. Mina uses the suppressing holy bow of 8 purifications, or we can just say it's a bow and arrow that slays demons. Mina's overall character design is one of my favorites in the series, which is complemented by SNK's sprite work with her fighting animations. The arrows really have some pizzazz when they're fired. The story-based reason is because Mina infuses ki into her arrows, making them stronger and better for demon slaying, which also might explain why her attacks are among the strongest in the game. During fights, Mina is accompanied by her pet Chomple, or is it Shample? Chomple? Champa? Shampoo? Snapple? Shemp? I don't know. Chomple serves no purpose other than making you feel bad for Mina, since after forming a bond with the creature, she finds out it's the demon she was hunting that destroyed a village which she now has to kill. You learn this after you defeat the final boss. Congratulations, you just beat the arcade mode. Here's your prize, unfortunate death. Number 2. Green Arrow from Injustice. Every character in Injustice has a special character trait activated by a certain button. I like how Ollie gets the ability to shoot arrows with this trait. It's like his fighting style is so focused on archery that his special character power is more of what he already does. No, there's more to it. Certain inputs change the type of arrows he can fire with his trait. And speaking of fire, one of them is loading fire arrows, which deals heavy damage and does greater chip damage. The next is loading an ice arrow, which is like Sub-Zero's ice ball. And the final option is packing lightning arrows, which no one ever used. Fine, they had their purpose. They temporarily stun and do slightly less damage than the fire arrows. The raw trait shoots basic arrows, which is a good indication of Green Arrow's precision with his weapon. By just pressing one button, he loads, aims, and fires arrows without needing a more complex input. His other arrow attacks allow for more arrows to be shot at once or more sparkly arrows mixed with his quick feet, and of course, super moves with exploding arrows. His bow is even prepared for close-range combat with a blade attached to it that he can spin like a hurricane, which is appropriately called Hurricane Bow. Since Green Arrow has a large arsenal of arrows in the comics, these arrows that he uses in Injustice are just a small sample of his variety. Regardless, he's a fun character to play with some great tricks. Also, a side note, his Injustice 1 default costume looks like it's made of the same material as the outfits for the Mortal Kombat 2 ninjas. Or is that just me? Here are a few quick honorable mentions. Pit from Smash Bros. Just missed the cut. He can shoot angelic arrows and take his bow apart. It's pretty cool, actually. Link just has a bit of seniority over him, plus more fighting game appearances. And Nightwolf from Mortal Kombat, who has a cool bow and arrow made of spirit energy, however he does not do too much with that specific spirit weapon. Number 1. I'm assuming if you use your deductive reasoning skills, I mentioned during the Taskmaster segment that we'd see Hawkeye on this list. So with only one spot left, process of elimination says number 1. Hawkeye from Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Ignoring any backstory from the comics and just looking at the fighting game genre, Hawkeye has the most extensive lineup of arrows I've seen of any character in fighting games. Hawkeye versus Green Arrow using the comics? Sure, you have a good argument for Green Arrow since he has quite the arrow-themed tools, not to mention a great television series. But Injustice left out unique components of Green Arrow's arsenal, along with Arsenal, Green Arrow's buddy and former sidekick. However, Hawkeye brought his buddy along for the ride. Hawkeye's level 3 super move fires an arrow with Ant-Man on it, who grows larger until he steps on the opponent. Hawkeye basically fires an arrow that can kick the ass of Hawkeye's opponent for him. But the level 3 barely shows off Hawkeye's mastery of marksmanship, since he has someone fight on his behalf. I guess the best way to explain why Hawkeye has the best display of weaponry is to go down his list of arrow-themed special moves. Luckily, he gives all of the arrows self-explanatory names as he yells out the attacks. So it's the top 9 Hawkeye arrows in no specific order. Triple arrow, net arrow, exploding arrow, speed shot, freeze shot, poison tip, piercing bolt, scatter shot, triple piercing. With these attacks, he has some elements of nature covered, speed, traps, setups, and even poison, which is seldom seen in the Marvel vs. Capcom games. To cap off how skilled of an archer Hawkeye is, he has a move that always hits his target. His level 1 super move, Gimlet, which will fire an arrow that reaches the opponent anywhere on the screen. Yes, you can block it, but you cannot escape it. So between the tracking, tricks, and some third word that probably starts with the letter T, Hawkeye shows off his archery abilities the most of any fighting game marksman I've seen. Now, what did you think of these choices? Would you put them in a different order, or would you put a different fighting game archer here? Let me know in the comments section. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Thanks to SoftwareAgentsCorp for most of the B-roll, NegetiveX for the MKX footage, and Professor Oats for the flashy Taskmaster combo footage. And with that being said, I will see you all in the next video.